You're tuned in, tuned up, and ready to go. Welcome to Ria's Ham Shack, a weekly conversation about amateur radio, shortwave listening, and radio tech, hosted by Ria Gyram, N2RJ, and heard weekly on WRMI Legends Shortwave. And now, here's your host, Ria.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Ria's Ham Shack right here on WRMI Legends 5050. I am Ria, call sign N2RJ. And this show is brought to you weekly on WRMI Radio, 5050 kilohertz. And I'd like to thank Ted Randall, Holly, and Jeff White, and the entire crew at WRMI, everybody who makes this possible. Jeff Lawrence does our fabulous intro voiceover. I really love it. Anyway, this week I'm in San Diego, California, dealing with some ham radio business, believe it or not. Next week, I'll be at the Dayton Hamvention in Xenia, Ohio. Yes, they kept the name Dayton Hamvention. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the past Hamventions and some of the things that I hope to be doing at future Hamventions. This year, I think I'm going to dive into a few more of the forums, and I'm going to tell you why I choose some of the forums I go to at Dayton Hamvention. So it's always a good thing. And some of it's influenced by my friends. We also talk about the start of the 6-meter E-skip season, what's been going on with that, and also how to make the best out of 6 meters. Okay, so this is Ria's Ham Shack, heard weekly on WRMI 5050. If you'd like to support the station, you could go to WRMILegends.com, WRMILegends.com, and you can see ways to support the station. Of course, first, let's talk about where else you can find news on Ria's Ham Shack. Coming right up. You love the news on Ria's Ham Shack, you're going to absolutely love the news on Ria's Substack. So to go to n2rj.substack.com, where you'll find the news, views, and opinions, and all sorts of interesting angles that you will find nowhere else. n2rj.substack.com. It's a weekly newsletter. It's absolutely free. You can sign up. You can tell your friends. You can learn about all the happenings in ham radio for the past week. And, some interesting news, views, opinions, and commentary, which you'll really not find anywhere else. n2rj.substack.com. n2rj.substack.com. We put it in your inbox once a week. And you get a convenient digest to read everything you need to know about amateur radio. n2rj.substack.com, n2rj.substack.com. Be sure to subscribe. So I think every ham radio operator, at least in the United States, has either thought of or has done at least one trip to Dayton Hamvention, which is essentially, I believe it's the world's biggest ham fest. And it's more than just that. It's a gathering. It is it's a mecca, so to speak, of everybody in ham radio. It's where everybody in ham radio comes together. And years ago, it used to be held at the Hara Arena in Trotwood. That's where I went to my first Hamvention in 2006. And then I've been there most years. I missed a couple of years, and then I started going back recently. And of course, when I was with the ARL, I went with them, and this year I'm actually going with ARDC. So I've always enjoyed the Hamvention, the camaraderie, the friends, obviously, and it's not just Hamvention itself, but the after events. There is the various dinners, and not only the dinners, but you stop at the bar and you talk with contesters, DXers, hams of all stripes, and you basically tell them, you describe your war stories, okay? And for some of them, probably fueled by alcohol, right? Because that's just how it goes, which is why I usually stay at the hotel where they are. And years past, that has been the Dayton Grand Plaza, but within the last couple of years, it's been Hope Hotel at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So that's where I'm going to be. All well and good. So, but let's talk about the Hamfest themselves. So usually, there's like a big vendor floor. You could go and see all the various booths and stuff like that. And there are other places where you could go and you could listen to talks, and you can also contribute. You could talk interactively. Although some of them are kind of dry, I think, but there are many of them that are absolute gems. So I used to go to the ARL forum, but then I found out basically that essentially, even being an ARL official, back then, they only let the local folks talk and a few special invited people, and then I guess the quote unquote CEO, and also the president, and then the division director. It's kind of weird for a national convention, but I guess that's how it is. So I'm probably going to skip the ARL forum. There's nothing I don't know that's there. There are interesting stuff, especially now that I'm deeply involved in digital communications and such like that. So Tapper topics in digital radio. So Tapper has always been a long time mainstay of digital amateur radio and SDR and such like that. So they're at room 1, 9:15 to 10:35. I'll probably go there. If you're interested in Parks on the Air, that's 10:45 to 11:50, and that will tell you a lot about interesting things. There's Innovation in Ham Radio, and that same one might be interesting. The Antenna Forum's interesting too, 2 to 5 p.m. Usually you have, I believe, Tim Duffy, K3LR. He has presented a couple times there too. So there are a few others. I mean, I'm going to be at the ARDC one in room 2, the 2:40 p.m. to 3:45 in room 2, and that's going to be interesting. And then after that, in room 3, this is on Friday, I'm probably going into the amateur radio and the law, 2:35 to 3:45 p.m. in room 3. And this is usually hosted by Fred Hopengarten and Bob Familio and a couple other lawyers, where they talk about the law, meaning, legislation and other things that affect amateur radio. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to do that. And room 4, 2:10 to 3:30 on Friday, Women Ham Radio Innovation. And that's going to be at that's the YLRL. I usually go there. I might go this year. Probably. I usually go to the YL forum. 11:35 at room 4 on Friday, Kit Building Techniques for Success. And this is my friend Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB. So Joe is the kit guy, and he's a kit building editor for CQ Magazine. And he enjoys, teaching people how to build radios from kits. So his forum is always very interesting. So those are some of my forums on Friday. On Saturday, there are a few other forums. There is the YouTubers forum at 9:15 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. So I might head on there. That's in room 1. 10:25 to 11:20, Helping Hands, the story of ham radio spirit in Ukraine. And that's by Karsten Dower, DM9 Echo Echo. And Karsten has had an interesting history with Ukraine. If you remember, we talked about him on a previous episode. I actually interviewed him last year at Dayton, where he went to Ukraine and he drove his little Mercedes van a few times to the Polish-Ukraine border to drop off supplies for them. And he also kept some Ukrainian refugees in his hotel until they were able to find housing elsewhere. And this was really, really nice. So it's probably a good forum to visit, even if it's to just meet Karsten. And he is a wonderful humanitarian, and also a good contester and DXer. So don't miss it. At 10:25 a.m. in room 1. Later on, you have the DX and contest forum. Might tell some interesting stories about DX and contesting. I am not too interested in the contesting forum because, to me, it just seems kind of like out of reach for some people. They talk about big things and big stations, and well, that's out of reach for the average radio ham. and because it's so expensive. So I kind of see it as just bragging. But anyway, there's propagation 4 to 5 p.m. Room 2 at 9:15 a.m. They have the youth forum. Then 12:10 they have ARIS 2.0. That's going to be interesting. The amateur radio and the International Space Station. 1:10 to 2 p.m. AMSAT, if you're interested in satellites. And then 2:20 to 2:50 ham radio in China and global enthusiasts. So that is going to be really, really interesting. Jesse Chen, BD7LLY. And you're going to see in ham radio in China. I might be visiting them since I might be interested in China. I might be going there, to be honest. And I want to know how you do ham radio over there. Interesting. And what's new in ham radio deluxe? 3 to 4 p.m. 4:10 to 5 p.m. Common threads of ham radio innovation. Okay. Room 3, 9:15, Fox Hunting, 10:50, 11:50, ARL, Good Operators and Interference. Riley Hollingsworth, always worth it. Riley's a good friend. Riley will talk about spinning the big knob, but also how to deal with interference. So probably not a bad idea to visit that one. But that clashes with the Ukraine forum, so I'm kind of torn. I might, I don't know. I might go to Karsten's forum. You have a couple of ARL forums all the way down, and the Aries membership. Like I said, I'm not really going to the ARL forum. It's the same thing I've heard over and over again. So, and room 4, Arduino, the next generation, first one, 9:15 to 10:30, FastCAD TV. 10:40 to 11:50, 12 to 1:30, VHF, UHF microwave, 1:40 to 2:40, QCWA annual members meeting. I haven't joined QCWA, even though I have my 25 years of amateur radio licensure. So, we'll see how that goes as well. And that's some really interesting stuff. They have HamSci. That's something to go to 2:50 to 3:50 p.m. I think I'll go to that one. And then 4 to 5 p.m. using Arden to create an IP ham radio network. Always cool stuff with Arden. And Arden is using ham radio IP networking for emergencies. Sunday, there are a few forums. 9:15 to 10:15 a.m. Room 1, HF Digital Voice. Okay, 10:30 to 11. I might go to that one. 10:30, 11:30. How to get started digital modes. 9:15 to 10:15. Lightning and grounding. That's room 2. 10:30, 11:30. Solar power for portable operations. Yes. And room 3. Voice control of amateur radio systems and AI voice assistants. That's something we'll be talking about. 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. SWR meters make you stupid. Eric Nichols, KL7HA. Eric is a gem of a ham. He's always had something interesting to say, and he's always, he's had his work with the harp and such like that. So interesting to hear what he has to say. Techniques of the best radio operators, room 4, 9:15 a.m. And, okay, that's interesting. And then 10:30 to 11, you have DMR, current and future state. And that's good. Now, Sunday they don't really have much because Sunday they have the prize drawings. That's some pretty interesting stuff. So, I'll see you at Hamvention. That should be some pretty interesting things. When we come back, I'll talk a little bit about 6-meter propagation, followed by the news here on Ria's Ham Shack. So, one of the great things about having an HF radio is the ability to work DX. But you need to know where you can find this DX. And you can actually find all the latest news, tips, tricks, scuttlebutt, and on-the-scene reports at dx-world.net. That's dx-world.net. My friend Call and his fabulous crew of correspondents bring you all the latest DX news from around the world right into your ham shack. Okay, so check out dx-world.net, and they also supply the news here on Ria's Ham Shack. So if you want to get the source of the news, you go to dx-world.net. That's dx-world.net. So it's that time of the year again. It is 6 meter e-skip season, and 6 meter e-skip season is when you have the opportunity to work some wonderful DX. I like to tell you a little bit about how I do 6 meter e-skip season. So a lot of people now are basically into FT8 on 6 meters, which it's kind of annoying in some respects, but I can understand. And it is really sort of, it's a very controversial thing where people are saying, well, FT8 is dominating and taking over. And there are people who say, no, it's just fine. So what I've done is I'm looking for new countries on FT8 all the time. But I'm also looking to see occasionally if there are contacts on single sideband and CW in particular. And I actually made a couple contacts across the pond last year on sideband. Like I believe I made one with either Italy or Scotland. It was so nice to see such strong propagation. Of course, now we have a lot of sunspots, so you're probably going to see e-skip enhanced by the F2 propagation, and that's probably going to bring some really interesting possibilities for DX, where you're going to get DX on a lot of different things. So I'm hoping that the DX is good enough that I can complete at least get most of the way to my DXCC on 6 meters, because I just have like 22 countries to confirm. I'm at 79 countries confirmed, and hopefully, I could get the last, that'll be 21 countries confirmed, and I'll be well on my way. I'll have 10 bands of DXCC. So that's good. So the first bit of news has to do with the Digital Library of Amateur Radio and Communications, which is a special project of the Internet Archive, where they archive a whole bunch of amateur radio related materials. And this is from their from archive.org. They've continued to expand their collection, and they're now up to past 75,000 items of ham radio shortwave history. They recently added hundreds of presentations recorded by Rat Pack, the Radio Amateur Training, Planning, and Activities Committee, which is an excellent group, by the way. They have a lot of interesting knowledge, and they're run by Dan Marler, K7REX, really, really, really good guy. And they're also adding dozens of talks given at the Microhams Digital Conference. So they're also adding newsletters from amateur radio groups around the world, 1,400 bullets from Irish Radio Transmitter Society, 600 newsletters from Worldwide TV/FM DX Association, and also the regional groups, including Anchorage, Alaska, Amateur Radio Club, Indianapolis Radio Club, Pikes Peak, and a dozen other organizations. So they're really good stuff. A lot of these have been posted on the internet before, believe it or not. And of course, Glenn Hauser has allowed decades of his radio content to be archived in the DLR library, including 1,200 episodes of World of Radio, and Informe DX and Mundo Radial, Spanish language translations of World of Radio, Continent of Media, a program about media around the American continent, and Hauser logs. So lots of stuff from Glenn Hauser there. As controversial as some of it may be, believe it or not, International Radio Report, they have in Montreal, Canada. Is that in English or French? Yeah, and they're going to have a lot of archives of that. And that's interesting. You've been seeing a lot about the Internet Archive. I mean, they've been under attack recently with various lawsuits and such like that. So, Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Full disclosure that ARDC is supporting them, so I'm cheering them on. But they're going to be really, really good, I think, and I hope that they succeed at least in this endeavor. And I hope they continue to archive more stuff. I might try to see if I could get them to archive some of these shows, but I have to probably take out the music because the music is copyrighted. So let's talk about some DX news from dx-world.net, and you have a few of them here. First one is TX7L Marquesas Island, and their DDR at F6 BCW. He sends some pictures of last year's TX7G activity. You can see more on dx-world.net. You have OY/IW1PRT Faroe Islands. Alberto IW1PRT will be active from Faroe Islands as part of OI/IW1PRT from May 22nd to May 25th. He's going to be at 10 and 12 meters SSB, FM, and FT8. And he's going to QSL via EQSL and Logbook of the World. Also QRZ Logbook. And 9M4KI, Songsong Island, and AS058. So they're going to have 18 people from Malaysia will be active from Songsong Island and West Malaysia during May 12th to 14, 2023. They're going to be in a number of different bands. And QSL via 9M2HUS. The big one, though, is Ducie Island. And Ducie Island is going to be... They're going to be on the air. And this is going to be a real interesting operation because it's going to be air from June 10 to June 24. And there'll be 5 stations from 160 to 6 meters. But they're not going to be physically on the island. What they're going to do is they're going to deploy this thing called remote radio in a box. And that box is going to be deployed on the island. And then they're going to have they're going to have complete stations available up to 1 kilowatt. And they're going to essentially have a small 3-person team build a station in a short period of time by having this radio in a box. And then they're going to essentially operate from a nearby boat. Yeah. And this is kind of, it's been a little controversial for some people. It's been where some people are, they say, one person said, well, if this is the way DXing is going, I'm off the train. Another one said, hey, this is great. This could reduce the risk of human life and limb that you see in some places like Bouvet Island. This was tested at FO/AA7JV, where over 11,000 remotely operated QSOs were made by 5 remote operators. Yeah, and Ducie Island is not exactly a common entity. I believe they're in the 50s on Club Log. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And then I'm guessing if this is successful, it's just going to go further and further. So they drop this box on the island, and then they go safely on their boat, and then they operate remotely, either, I guess, via Starlink or a microwave link or something. And theoretically, if they have Starlink, they can have anybody anywhere in the world operate this thing. And let's see, 14 operators based in North America, Europe, and Asia will operate land-based remote control stations. Okay, so they are going to have remote operators from North America, Europe, and Asia. Okay, now that is interesting. Now, this is going to be really good, especially for areas that have a bunch of restrictions. Like now there are a lot of environmental restrictions being placed on DXpeditions. And some of them have gone specifically to single out DXpeditions. which is really interesting. And so good luck to them. Well, I don't know what to say about it. I want to see how it works out. Another D expedition coming up, V63S, Pohnpei, Micronesia. So you're going to have Sigfrido, IW9FMD, who is going to be active from Pohnpei, Micronesia. It's V63S. He's going to be on single sideband, QSL via IT9 YVO. And then you're going to have DX World. It has a weekly bulletin. You can check more on that as well. TR8CR Gabon. Look for Roland. He's going to be F80N. He's going to be on Gabon as TR8CR June and July. Gabon is always an interesting one. Africa, 9Q3WX, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so Vlad OK2WX, he's going to be active as 9Q3WX from Congo from August 15th to September 3rd. I know this one was interesting because I had made contacts with them, but they're with another operator. They never counted for DXCC, but I guess now I can probably make more contacts and they'll count for DXC. Minami Torishima, so Take is going to be active from Minami Torishima until May 20th, and he's going to be active on CW and some FT8. Well, we'll see how that goes. I've been trying to contact them because that'll be a new country for me. FO/F6 BCW, French Polynesia, and he's going to be operating. He's arrived on the island, but the local village has been suffering from power cuts and is running temporarily on generators. So, all right. So there's a ton more DX news on dx-world.net. You can check them out, dx-world.net. So here's a story, and it's always sad when reported by Silent Keys, but this one is from the YL Beam newsletter. Azucena Albarracin, LU90Y, and she's an Argentinian ham. Well, she died at 95 years old, so she had a long life. On April 13th, 2023, and the sudden death of colleague Azucena Albarracin, widow of Taburu LU90Y, 95 years old, at her home in the Salteña capital. She was one of Salta's most recognized voices in the last half century. She could be heard for hours every day on the 20-meter band, where she was very popular not only in her own country, Argentina, but also Chile and Uruguay. She was born in Formosa on March 10, 1928. She formed a family in Salta, mother of Ida, Rossi, and Raul, with 8 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. She entered radio in the 1960s in the AM era, being one of the first women with a license. Alongside Nelly, and she's been Nelly, let's see here. It's a little hard to read. Nelly Lopez, LU50X, Susalaki of Metane. She was in sideband, and of course she found a Kenwood TS120. She was she used a dipole antenna, and very good. So it was she was very active until about a year ago, when she kind of just her memory kind of just started to fade out, and she really just I guess it was on the way down. So always glad to hear celebrations of life like this. Always sad to hear when they go, but this person left an indelible mark on the world, no doubt. And I've been to Argentina. It's a very interesting country, very interesting, and maybe I'll go back sometime and operate amateur radio. But she's definitely an inspiration. And this is from YL Beam newsletter. Of course, she's been there. So, all right, let's take a break and come back with Q&A and also a little discussion about the 6-meter band and e-skip and how you can make the most of it.
All the ways to listen to Ria's Ham Shack. Let me count the ways. The first and the best way is, of course, on WRMI Legends 5050 on your shortwave dial and other frequencies as appropriate. You can also listen on the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can listen on WRMILegends.com where we have it on the live stream. You can catch it on the Ria Ham Shack YouTube channel. Just look for youtube.com/@N2RJ. I publish a show, and it's always a few days after it airs on WRMI Legends. And if you want to get the show first, you go on WRMI Legends 5050 shortwave or on WRMILegends.com. Of course, you can also go on WRMILegends.com to find out ways to support the show and support the station and to keep the tubes glowing and keep the fabulous shortwave programming coming. Now back to Ria's Ham Shack.
So before I do the Q&A, I want to kind of like touch on some memories of Dayton past and what's in it for the future. So Dayton past, I've been there in 2006, and essentially that kind of launched me into amateur radio. I got a mobile setup. Well, it didn't launch me into amateur radio. It launched me into getting more serious about HF on amateur radio, because previously I was a shack on a hip ham. And yeah, some people find that term to be kind of derogatory, but I think it's an amusing way to describe it, because I have my hand held on my hip and I was essentially just talking to people on VHF, UHF repeaters. There's nothing wrong with that. I like that. Even out here in California, where I'm here for the week, I got into some local repeaters here with my friend Jim Aspinwall, NO1PC. He's been curating along with a team. It's called CalNet. And I believe you go to calnet.org. You know, if you're in the California area, you can find out about the repeaters, and you can, get on there. So I went on to the San Diego node and got on there. Interesting stuff. So they're pretty interesting. So anyway, so Dayton Hamvention at the old Hara Arena. And of course, there's no going back to Hara, because Hara was destroyed by tornado. And also Hara was, I believe it was tornado or some sort of weather event destroyed it. And they've since demolished it. And boy, it was really in a bad state before that. It was leaking, it was damaged, and the restrooms were awful. And add to that, in 2009, they had this, was it 2009? Yeah, 2009. They had this incident where the sewage lines erupted above ground, and that was not pleasant. So anyway, but there have been many good times at Hara. Browsing the flea market was really interesting. And of course, you parked across the road in the grass parking lot, and you see like cars and cars full of antennas. That it was an absolutely grand time, and I think that it was really, really nice to reminisce on. Of course, the past events and the past suites, you had like the Dayton Crown Plaza was the epicenter of a lot of activity. You had the contest suites, you had the pizza parties, you had the pile-up competition, and of course, some others like the NJDXA, North Jersey DX Association, which is my radio club, my DX club. We used to have a suite, and we used to enjoy a lot of, good drinks and friends, and used to be up till like 2-3 in the morning, essentially just causing a ruckus. And like I said, you have a lot of ham talk fueled by alcohol. And believe it or not, that loosened a lot of people up. And you talked a lot of things. So that was a pretty nice thing, I think. the other thing that I found is that ICOM in particular had a bunch of swag they used to give out. Like they were giving out t-shirts, and I have some of those old t-shirts. And now they actually have a little more sophisticated swag, but you kind of have to enter a drawing to get it. So they're a little more selective, but you can probably still get some swag. They have a lot of interesting products this year, I find. Let's talk about the future. So some of the future stuff I'm seeing is where ICOM now has this ICOM 905, and it's actually shipping. I want to get my hands on one. It is not a cheap radio. It's about $3,500, but it opens up a new world for a lot of people. And that new world is the world of SHF, the world of microwaves. So you're getting on the 1.2, which is not really microwave, but it's kind of microwave. 1.2, 2.4, 5.6. And then you get on to, if you have the module, the 10 gigahertz module, you could get on 10 gigs. And with that, you can make a lot of interesting contacts. Now, it does not only support the traditional amateur radio modes such as FM, such as SSB, CW. It also supports amateur television, analog amateur television, not digital, but that's something pretty nice. So I eventually, when I could get enough of my fabulous earnings from my YouTube channel that people think I make a lot of money on, I'm going to buy one, or by some miracle. And so tell your friends to watch more of Ria's Ham Shack, and that'll contribute to my ICOM 905 fund. Yeah, it's not much, but it does help. And but I've had experience on the microwaves with Andrea K2EZ. We used to go roving, and that I think is probably going to be my use for it. I'm going to put it in the back seat of the Tesla. I want to drive to a hilltop, and I'm going to try to make contacts with people on it. But the beauty of this design is the power over Ethernet. The power over Ethernet, where instead of having a coax cable, an RF cable going up to a transverter on a pole, you actually have just a control signal over Ethernet, which is like your network plug that you plug into your Wi-Fi router. And then that would operate the actual transceiver, which is up on the top of a pole. And the possibilities are endless with this, as you can imagine. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing in the flesh at Dayton Hamvention. Hopefully they have some live demos with it, and hopefully we get to see it. So yeah, that's gonna be pretty cool. Other things, apart from the forums, the products that I'm going to be looking for at Hamvention, I'm probably going to be looking at antennas to replace some of the old antennas here, because quite frankly, I've not had good experience with some antennas. I have a Stepper Monster antenna, and that thing has just been trouble. Stepper, I'm sure they're a great company, but everybody's complained about gear failures in the antennas, so I am kind of just weary of that, right? And this is, by the way, this is my own personal experience and opinion, so please don't go writing angry letters, okay? You can write them to me. I will probably respond to you, but don't go write them to other people you think that you can cancel me with. Okay. So those are a couple of things I want to see at Dayton Hamvention. I'm also looking for interesting little products. Every few years my interest in ham radio changes. Like for a while I was big into contesting and DXing. And that to me just got so, I don't know. I mean, it got kind of stagnant because it's the same thing over and over. And it's essentially everybody's going to Maine and competing from Maine. So that kind of killed it, because then you can't compete with the stations in Maine. So what you gonna do? There used to be a time when it was easy to win a plaque or some other award, and then it's kind of blown out the water. But we see how there are some contests I still take part in. But I might take part in contests again especially if I upgrade the antennas here. I used to be actually pretty competitive here, so it's not really it's not really that bad. I do like to listen. I do some scanning and shortwave listening too, obviously, especially with the WRMI Legends, and that's gonna be good. I'm probably gonna have some books. I'm hoping my publisher ship me some books to sign, but we'll see how that goes. And of course, I'll be there in the booth and talking to you guys about some of the latest and greatest stuff. So, yeah, really good time at Dayton Hamvention. So anyway, let's talk about the Q&A. And I've been really love answering Ham's questions, and I really enjoy telling you guys about the latest and greatest in ham radio, how to get your stations up and running. And remember to do your RF exposure evaluation, right? And because that is now necessary. It does not matter if you have done it, if you've just were in compliance before, you had 2-year transition period, you now have to do it. So it's easy to do. You just go into the calculators, and the calculators you could find. I have a YouTube video on the Ria's Ham Shack channel. You can go into the calculators and then you can download, you can run each band and then download your results. Well, I would say screenshot them or print them out and keep them with your station documentation. And anytime your antennas change, I will say you have to run it again. So anyway, so Anthony Frank here writes, any recommendations on a antenna analyzer for HF that fits in a $200 range? I like the MFG analyzer, but can't go that high. Well, there are a few, and there are some. I think for basic measurements, the MFG and antenna analyzers can't be beat. They're simple to use, and they're pretty rugged. I mean, I dropped mine so many times, and they use AA batteries, or they use just a regular 12 volts, so they're perfect. MFJ. You can also buy the Nano VNA. Just got to be careful where you buy it from. I would recommend going with a good store. I think Main Trading Company and RNL sells them. I'm not sure. They probably do, but if not, well, just be careful. Just be careful. RNL probably sells them, or you could go to Hamvention. There are probably a good few stores selling them. The Nano VNA though is pretty good for what it is, and it will give you a lot of information more than the MFJ. You can also get. I'm probably going to add some to the Ria's Ham Shack Amazon store, where you could probably buy them from there. That's a treat. Yeah, I will actually. I think I'll do that. I think I'll curate some and add them to the Ria's Ham Shack Amazon store. So, and I'll be having that in an upcoming announcement. But the Nano VNA is pretty good. The other thing is that you can actually do some pretty basic measurements with a lot of transceivers. If you run them at low power, and some of them have like an SWR graph function, so you might have the ability to analyze your antenna just how it is. Some of the rig experts are actually still quite cheap. Some of the lower end models are actually still quite cheap. You can buy them online, and they're made in Ukraine, right? So you support our friends in Ukraine, and they're pretty good. I own a couple of rig expert analyzers. They're good. Some of the cheaper ones only do HF. They don't do VHF, so that is going to be good. All right. So the next question is, and I put out a poll for this. are you going to fly or drive to Dayton? So there are some pros and cons of each one. I'm going to drive this year because I'm like 500 miles away. And yeah, even in the Tesla, okay, yeah, come on, petrol heads, don't beat up on me. But the charging is not too bad. I actually spend like 15 minutes charging at 4 stops. So I do that, and I get out, I just get out, go to the bathroom, and I'm done. It's already fully charged. And flying could be a bit of a challenge. So there are ways to fly, and what I've done in the past is I really hate connecting flights. So what I did was I actually got a direct flight into Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati Airport. And from CVG, I just rented a car and then drove 2 hours to Dayton. That cut down on the driving significantly. It did allow me to fly, and I was able to get there in reasonable time. You can fly into Dayton Airport, but you're going to make a connection anyway. And then in that connection, you're going to spend some time in the airport. You might have flight delays, and then you'll have the horde of hams going to departure. Okay? And a couple of years ago, he who shall not be mentioned anymore actually complained about how all his flight was delayed. And that caused problems. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. Of course, if you're coming from somewhere like California or frankly overseas or something, you have no choice. Just like I have no choice. When I'm going to Friedrichshafen, I'm not going to take a boat or swim. So that is good. Yeah, I hope to see many of you at Dayton. So this is an interesting question about APRS. How do you send email in APRS? So I found out from, and this is a website, I've not tried this, but I want to try it. You can send an email server is you can send an email message to email in capital letters with the recipient's email as the first word of the message. And you can only send one-liners. So you send an APR message, email, right? And it'll be email, and then the first line of the message will be the email address. So you could send email ria@n2rj.com, and then you say, I enjoy your show, and I listen every week. Yeah, that's only going to be one sentence. Frankly, for email, APRS is not the way to do it. Probably, if it's the final ditch, you can actually send text messages using APRS. And you can use it with something called SMSGate, SMSGTE. And SMSGTE is the way to go. And so basically SMSGTE, and then you send the phone number, and then you can then send a short text message. I use this all the time to demonstrate to people that, hey, APRS is a lot more than just tracking cars. So, yeah. If you really want to send email, you could use WinLink, and WinLink is the way to go for email. The only thing is that WinLink is proprietary, so you're going to have to use their software like Vara, or you're going to have to get a modem. And yeah, the system is not freely, but it's available to anyone. But I believe with Vara, you might have to pay a fee. I believe with the WinLink network, you might have to make a donation to actually get on, and that's fine. I have no problem doing that, because if you are using it as a service, what is it worth to you? So somebody might come back and tell me, well, no, it's free. Don't, Ria's not saying the correct thing. Okay. So anyway, whatever. If it is free though, tell me, because I had to pay. So the software is, it's, and like I said, I have no problem supporting somebody who provides a useful service. So don't even. Right. And so that is essentially how you do it. It's really not, it's not a big deal, really. There are other services, of course. There are other services that get into packet gateways, and you get into the whole digital ham rabbit hole. And then you have to worry about things like encryption, which is not legal on ham radio. Well, that is a whole different story. And I'm hoping that probably we could reach some middle ground on that. Okay. Scotty D asks, how many of you upgraded to extra but kept your original 2x3 call? No, I did not, because I don't like long call signs. And if, as you know, I've been interested in DXing in contest, I wanted something that was short, and I luckily got something with my initials. So, yeah, I will say that, I like short call signs, and I cannot lie. Somebody asks, and this is a really touchy question, why does the FCC ask if you have a felony charge? Well, they kind of do, because I believe they interpreted something of the good moral character requirement, and if you have a serious felony, they will take a dim view of it. And the thing is that for most felonies, believe it or not, unless it's, for most felonies, they will just review it, and then after review, they'll grant you a license. If it's something serious, and especially I've been told they take a very dim view of sexual offenses. So if you are one of those people, first of all, I'm not offering legal advice, but you are going to need legal advice, and that's going to have to come from a lawyer. So you're going to have to get a lawyer, and I'm not here to judge people. So, that's between you and the FCC. So, you do what you got to do. So that is an interesting question. Yeah, I know the FCC is asking all sorts of stuff. Some people want to think that they're trying to get hams not to operate. I don't think so. I think they want to apply the mandates from Congress they have, and the rules that they have passed. I've seen a pattern from the FCC where they have been a little more stringent in terms of following the congressional mandates that they've been given. Now, here is one, and it's antenna season, and you're going to love this one. So, John asks here, just finishing assembling a QRP guy NFET half wave, and now is waiting on a Rig Expert 35 Zoom to get delivered. Can you have the antenna, such as a dipole or NFET half wave, tuned on the bench or the ground with an analyzer, or does it still need to be thrown over a tree after every adjustment? And the short and simple answer is that when you are tuning your antenna, it needs to be exactly where it is that you plan to use it. Because especially for HF, antennas are not just in isolation. Antennas are actually influenced heavily by the objects around them. And the objects around them include trees, especially trees during the time that they're not in hibernation, which is, when they have moisture and water in them. You also have during the other objects would be, of course, like your antenna support structure, especially if it's metal. And this would be like a tower, a pole, or something. Buildings nearby, if you have this over a house, yes, it's going to have some interaction. And this one's probably obvious and probably not so obvious, the ground. So HF antennas are heavily influenced by the earth ground. And you definitely want to have them over the ground where they will be in their place using, and then you tune them up there. Because then you'll get a more accurate picture of their performance where they are. So yeah, so this is something you definitely need to take into account. And the formulas for calculating, especially for dipole or NFET half wave, you tune it to rough measurements, then you sling it up, and then you run the analyzer, and then you cut a little bit, and then you put it back up. It might take a good few hours. It's not a simple thing for a lot of people. But yeah, of course, some hams say, well, I can make contacts with anything. And yeah, making contacts. You can make contacts with anything. You are not going to get an accurate measure of an antenna's performance based on how you make contacts, because contacts are influenced by a variety of variables, including propagation and especially propagation. So you're not going to have an accurate gauge of your antenna's performance that way. So no matter what. But yeah, no, they need to be in place to properly tune, right? And that's just the way it comes down. The exception, I think, is like for Yagi antennas. You put them in a one direction and then you turn them around, and then you could probably check afterwards. You don't have to like tune every time you turn your antenna. And remember to do your RF safety, RF exposure evaluation, because you want to actually you want to make sure that you're in compliance with those rules from the FCC, because that's where it's at. Now, another question here. So the work bands. We talk about the work bands a lot. Most use of the 3 work bands, 12, 15, or 17. I do think that 15 meters obviously is used because of the fact that you get more equipment that can use it. That's just a no-brainer. On 12, 12 meters is used less because you kind of need sunspots. It's sort of like 10 meters. You need sunspots for it. 17 is used actually quite a lot, but it's not as popular as the other stuff because, again, you need a radio that supports the walk bands, and a lot of older radios do not. Those made before the 1980s, they're not supporting the walk bands because the walk bands did not exist for us. However, some of them could be tuned into the walk bands. So I would say, though, if you really want to explore the bands, go on and call CQ. Go on and make some noise, because that's how you get people radioactive. Yeah. Next question. Is an old satellite dish useful at all for amateur radio or an SDR? Well, on an old satellite dish, like for example, an old big satellite dish. So there are several types of satellite dishes, right? You have the small satellite dishes, which are for the home digital television services like DirecTV and Dish Network. You can use those for microwave experiments. You can use those also for EME. Some people have been using it for EME on 1296 megahertz. The bigger dishes are actually more suited for that because they're just bigger. You just have to find the focus point, and then you can then use that for EME. Believe it or not, EME is possible at a lot lower power levels today, and a lot because of the WSJT software. And this kind of caused controversy in the EME community because some guys think that you need to walk uphill 2 ways in the snow before you're able to operate on the holy EME bands. But not EME bands, but making contacts with EME. Hey, I want to try it out sometime. I haven't gotten there yet, and I think I do want to get there. Maybe if I pick up an ICOM 905, run that into an amplifier, who knows? That'll probably be great stuff. Well, anyway, this has been Ria's Ham Shack. I'm sorry for sounding so terrible. I don't know what hit me, but probably a combination of jet lag and picking up a bug. But it's been fun. I will see you guys at Dayton. Be sure to look for me, ria@n2rj.com, ria@n2rj.com. Be sure to stop by WRMI Legends. I'll be there sometime. And I will see you guys next week at the Dayton Hamvention in Xenia, Ohio. As I always say, peace and 73 to everybody. And keep your feet on the ground and your antennas in the clouds. All right, see you later.